is about biodiversity. And let me share to you first the most essential learning that you can see. The first one is we're gonna explain how species diversity increases the probability of adaptation and survival of organisms in changing environments. And also, we're gonna explain the relationship between population growth and carrying capacity. Let's talk about first what we have discussed last time. We talk about different evidences of evolution. We talk about the first one. The first evidence was fossils, which give us a picture of how organisms have changed over time. Number two, we have the comparative anatomy. This study the body of structures of animals to know that they have evolved from the likes of their common ancestor. Number three, we have species that closely related exhibit similar embryonic development even in the adult stage. And the last one, we have the genetic information that provide biochemical analysis and amino acid sequence of organisms. Before we proceed with our lesson, let's play a game. I'm sure you are familiar with 4 fixed in 1 word. So let's start. Let's have the first word. Very good. It is organism. You got it right. The second word. The second word is population. You got it up. Give it a thumbs up for yourself. Next, we have this biodiversity. Earth is composed of different creatures that nurture living things that have a big role in balancing ecological conditions. The interaction between organisms make the relationship and connection of one another intact to maintain the balance in the ecosystem. And the term that describes how organisms become ecologically and economically valuable, it is biodiversity. So what is biodiversity? Biodiversity is a variety of life found on a place on Earth. So specifically, the variety of all organisms living on Earth. Biodiversity used to describe the differences or variations of organisms. And when we say organism, it could refer to plants, could be animals, fungi and bacteria, humans, and many more. Biodiversity tells us we are all interconnected. We have 3 levels of biodiversity. The first one includes species diversity, genetic diversity, and the ecosystem diversity. Let's talk about first the species diversity. It includes simply as bacterium, multicolored flowers, and definitely human. According to an article published in Department of Environment and Natural Resources or the DENR in 2014, the country has more than 52,177 described species, of which more than half is found nowhere else in the world. Genetic diversity is a variety of genes or inheritable characteristics that are present in a population. All dogs belong to the same species traits. Same with the jellyfish and bees. The third level is the ecosystem diversity. Deals with variations in ecosystem within geographical locations. This includes deserts, forests, marine ecosystem, and rainforest. Truly, organisms are any part of biodiversity and may be economically and ecologically valuable because they are the products of source of food, medicine, clothing, shelter, and energy. Those organisms are also important in maintaining balance in the ecosystem as they perform their specific roles.
Value of a species can be divided into various categories. The first one is direct economic value, the second one is indirect economic value, and the third one is the aesthetic value. Let's first talk about the direct economic value. Direct economic value, which means the species is considered to have direct economic value in their products, our source of food, medicine, clothing, shelter, and energy. For examples of this is some of medicine being used nowadays have formulation extracted from plants or animal.
Next is the indirect value or the indirect economic value. It is a species of indirect economic value if there are benefits produced by organism without using them. For example, certain species maintain the chemical quality of natural bodies of water, prevent soil erosion and floods, materials in the soil, and absorb pollutant. And lastly, the aesthetic value. A lot of species provides visual or artistic enjoyment like a forested landscape and the calming beauty of natural park, or they may be used for spiritual meditation like the prayer mountains. Do you wonder how the population of organisms in an ecosystem affect biodiversity? Biodiversity plays an important role in adaptation and survival of living organisms. Now, let us discuss some important terms about biodiversity. First, we have population. Population is a group of organisms of some species that live in a certain area or community.
Population can be a group of humans, it can also be a group of animals like this group of fish, or it can also be a group of plants, just like this cornfield.
There are many factors that can cause a population size change. The first one is we have the birth rate or the natality. It is the number of births. We also have the death rate or the mortality. It is the number of organisms that are dying in a population. Thus, if the birth rate is greater than the death rate, a population will grow. But if the death rate is greater than the birth rate, then the population will decrease. While population will probably continue to grow in size, a population of organisms cannot grow forever. Its growth would be limited or stop at some point. Population growth shows us the trend whether a certain population is increasing or decreasing. As a population grows in an area of a population, may experience the effects of increased densities. Population density refers to the number of organisms per unit area. Population growth is limited by two general factors. Number one is the density independent factors, and the other one is density dependent factors. So what is density independent factors? Those are limiting factors that can stop population from growing. It can translate as natural disaster, temperature, sunlight, and the activities of humans in the environment. The number two is density dependent factors. Those are factors that come into play when population unit reaches a certain number of organisms. So, for example, when population reaches a certain size, there won't be enough resources for food, shelter, water for all of the organisms. As a population grows in an area, population may experience the effects of increased densities. Population density refers to the number of organisms per unit area. Take note that if population density is very high, it means that there are a lot of organisms crowded into certain area. But if there are few organisms in an area, it means that it have a sustainable biodiversity. As a population grows in an area, a population may experience the effect of increased density in a given area. The maximum population size of the species that the environment can sustain is what we call carrying capacity. So what is carrying capacity? Carrying capacity refers to the number of individuals that can be supported in a given area with natural resources limit and without degrading the natural, social, cultural, and economic environment for present and future generations. Carrying capacity is determined by the amount of available resources like food, water, or habitat. If the population grows indefinitely, competition will increase between organisms and less resources will be available to sustain the population. That can lead to density dependence. For this reason, it may cause an ecosystem to collapse. Just like the fish pond, if there is bowl that can no longer hold the number of fish inside it can be broken. And with carrying capacity, when resources are unlimited, population exhibit what we call exponential growth, which means organisms reproduce at a constant rate, and the graph is an exponential graph, which is a J-shape. It means it depicts a J-shaped curve in graph. On the other hand, when resources are limited, it means that the population exhibit logistic growth. It means organisms reproduce increasingly, but that gradually decreases due to infinite amount of resources. Unlike exponential growth, logistic defends an S-shaped curve, and you can see on top that there is a broken line which shows that the carrying capacity of an environment. The stability of our environment is being threatened by human activities, such as polluting the air, throwing plastic into different bodies of water that can harm and kill animals, forest fire that can destroy animals' habitat, or using pesticides that can increase the effect of biomagnification, and it can eventually harm us too. So what you can do to protect all of these creatures? As a student, you should do something and practice the proper way to preserve and maintain the beauty of our environment.
Now, let's watch a video about preservation of biodiversity.
Biodiversity represents everything that lives on Earth. It is the fruit of billions of years of evolution, shaped by natural processes and increasingly by the influence of humans. So far, about 1.75 million species have been identified, but scientists believe there could be 13 million species living on our planet. Biodiversity is life. It heals us, as more than 70,000 plant and tree species on Earth are used in medicine. It gives us shelter. Without wood, we couldn't build houses, furniture, or tools. Biodiversity feeds us and clothes us. The consumption patterns of people in rich countries are the principal cause of biodiversity loss. The rapid loss of the Earth's species is estimated to be between 1,000 and 10,000 times higher than the natural extinction rate. Today, our planet hosts 7 billion people. We need to preserve biodiversity so that it can meet the needs of 9 billion of us in 2050. The UN Convention on Biological Diversity aims to provide a framework to address the promotion and protection of biodiversity as a source of goods and services essential to life. The effect of human activities magnified in recent years by population growth and global climate change has greatly reduced biodiversity in ecosystems around the world. One way each of us can contribute to foster biodiversity is to choose a more sustainable lifestyle. Education can help us recognise that our individual actions, as harmless as they can appear, can have global ramifications. We need to learn that we are all part of a web of life. When one species disappears, others are at risk of disappearing as a result. We need to empower our children and youth today to help foster biodiversity tomorrow. But how? Let's take the example of a group of secondary students that goes to observe what remains of the forest in a protected area. After learning firsthand about the importance of forests, students discuss the reasons for deforestation and its effects on the livelihoods of communities, as well as on climate and other natural hazards. They then develop a list of simple actions to help restore the forest and better manage it through actions they can take at school and at home. To communicate these actions to other schools and within the community, they animate a community radio program to encourage replanting trees and other plants in their area. During community festivities, they organise role-playing activities to raise awareness of the various aspects of preservation, as well as the use and promotion of the resources within protected areas. Protecting our planet is in our hands, and it is education that can help us act today.
We're done with our discussion. So let us now apply what we have learned with our lesson. Let's answer engagement based learning task 2 on page 3 for in your LEAP module material. So this is your activity. You will study the chart about the habitat where cow population has reached its carrying capacity and answer the following question. So we have the question number 1, what is carrying capacity? And question number 2, what have you noticed with the population of cow between May and June?
Are you done? Let's answer your work. Let's answer number 1. What is carrying capacity? Anyone can answer? Okay, so very good. If you answer that carrying capacity refers to the number of individuals that can be supported in a given area within natural resource limits and without degrading the natural, social, and cultural and economic environment for future and present generation, you got it correct.
Number 2 question, what have you noticed with the population of cow between May and June? So if your answer is the population of cow from May to June suddenly decreases, as a result, there will be unlimited resources for the community as carrying capacity is positive. So if you got the 2 questions correct, congratulations, you have 10 points. Let's summarize what we have discussed for today. First, we have biodiversity. Biodiversity is the variety of life found in a piece of earth. And we have 3 levels. The species diversity, the genetic diversity, and the ecosystem diversity. Organisms are part of biodiversity and may be economically and ecologically valuable. Value of organism can be divided into 3 categories. We have the direct economic value, indirect economic value, and the aesthetic value. Population is a group of organisms of the same species that live in a certain area or community. There are many factors that can cause population size to change. The first one is birth rate or the natality, and another one is the death rate or the mortality. Population density refers to the number of organisms per unit area. A population growth is limited by 2 general factors: the density independent factors and number 2, density dependent factors. Capacity refers to the individuals or number of individuals that can be supported in a given area within natural resource limit and without degrading the natural or social, cultural, and economic environment for present and future generations. Population exhibit exponential growth if the resources is unlimited and depicts J-shaped curve in graph. Population exhibit logistic growth if the resources is limited and depict S-shaped curve in graph. And as your assignment, please answer the essay part, learning task 3 into your LIFT module and write it in a piece of paper, and you can send it to personal message to me so that I can check it. And before I end my discussion, I want to leave you, my dear students, a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. He says, "For in the true nature of things, if we rightly consider every green tree is far more glorious than if we're of gold and silver." That's all for today, students. I hope you learn and enjoy our lesson. Thank you for listening. Till our next lesson, keep safe and God bless us.